Wildcat fans to our instant reaction show. Had a great win and a good series against the Montana State Bobcats.
Bring out the brooms.
Yeah, bring out the brooms. I'm your host, Colby Peterson, and on our panel today for our instant reaction show, we have Sean Lewis.
Great.
And we have Dustin Chapman.
It does feel a little bit like a playoff atmosphere when you mention bringing out the brooms, Sean. Like it is a mini playoff series.
I like these. I know I was kind of down on these back-to-back games and just interested how they're coming out, but I like the format so far. I'm not sure I'd want to do this moving forward in a regular season, but I love the fact that we can say we got a sweep over Montana State, and you get that instant, and they don't have a chance to come back and play us again until we get into Boise in March.
Yeah.
So I'm conflicted on this because I'm the same way. Like I actually think it makes for better competition, and Colby, I mean, I could jump into this, but we hypothesized about this before the season started that the second games would get really chippy, and they were. Like it definitely had a playoff feel, but the downside of that is I do think it does hurt the top teams because I think you're going to lose more games than you're going to win. You're going to have more series splits than sweeps if it were a normal season.
Yeah, I'd say that definitely is the case. And the top tier teams in the Big Sky this year have seen a number of splits on the road or otherwise. You know, EWU's had some splits. We've had some splits. It's been really, really tough to do this. I think this is the first time. These are the first two games that Montana State has lost, and so they've done a good job of taking care of these conference games, whether at home or on the road. But let's talk about the game, guys, or let's talk about the last two games because we didn't have an instant reaction show on Thursday. We're a little bit we needed to spend some time with our families after what we did on Wednesday. So initial thoughts, guys, and like I said, we can talk about the Thursday game as well as this afternoon's game. Sean Lewis, what did you think about this series?
I think this was a great series, and my key takeaways for the two games are these. One, Weber State established themselves as one of the top teams in the Big Sky Conference. The conference standings as of right now, I think there's 4 teams. Dave Fox was all over this during the broadcast. There are 4 teams, I believe, at 6-2 or 6-3 in the conference standings. I'll have to look that up. But we've got This was a statement series to go get Montana State, who's been at the top for the entire of the league season so far, and say, we're here. We just took 2 from you, and the next chance you have is in Boise in March. So this was a dominating – I want to say dominating because these were 2 close games, but this was a definite statement set of games for the Wildcats to say, if you want to win the Big Sky, you've got to contend with us.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, because winning, I mean, not blowouts by any means. And this is a little bit uncharacteristic of the Wildcats because normally the way it's gone is the first game in the series has been an absolute blowout. And then the second one has been close or the Wildcats have lost at the end. That wasn't the case in this series. Both the games were very close. The Wildcats, maybe played a little bit more confidently on Thursday than they did Saturday, but this was a close game right down to the wire. Within 2 minutes, it was still a 1-possession game. For the Wildcats, opened up an 8-point lead, and then the Bobcats punch back and trim it back down to 3 to a 1-possession game. So, I mean, very good team coming from Bozeman. Chappie, your thoughts?
Yeah, to jump in on that, very good team from Bozeman, and I think they mentioned on the broadcast, 4 of the 5 guys are freshmen. That's going to be a lot of fun for a few years. With maybe a brewing rivalry in hoops with Montana State rather than Montana, or do we just call them Montana because that's apparently it's ubiquitous, and you can just call them Montana.
I felt bad for the MSU fans of the Big Sky Podcast Network because if that were my guys, if I was being called by my rival school's name throughout a game against somebody that wasn't them, I'd be kind of salty.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Very, very annoyed. Yeah, because I mean, especially where it's like, a lot of this coming from, a guy who played at our school, has played in the Big Sky, knows where these schools are at, knows who they are. I'd be a little annoyed too.
But was he trolling or I don't know. Either way. But anyway.
Great question. Was he trolling? I don't know.
Overall thoughts though. That was just a lot of fun. Like that was fun. That was a good close series. 2 teams that were well matched. The level of play was fun. The officiating was not terrible, but it was competitive. Yeah, it was fun. But I will say this: it was so much fun I got to go to the game on Thursday, and it was highly enjoyable. I didn't get to go today, but just the overall feel of the games, two teams competing, that was awesome. Oh, and final thing on the game on Thursday. I was up in the upper deck because I didn't want to pay double for tickets, and that's just me because I'm cheap. But with nobody in the arena or with few people in the arena, you can hear a lot, even from above the portal, from down on the court. It's amazing how much you can hear being said down on the court.
Chap had to get some earmuffs for his children there.
It's possible, yes, absolutely possible that may have been a thought.
So here's my thing about this. If we were to see these two teams as in the championship Saturday in Boise, I think that would be a worthy title bout. And we always hear it's tough to beat a team 3 times in a season, and sometimes you sweep in the regular season, they get you that one. It's a 1-game matchup. You don't have I'm so excited for the conference tournament after watching these 2 games, just because I want to see these teams that are relatively evenly matched go for round 3.
Yeah. Also, I want to shout out Ryan Foley's in the comments here saying, "What's up, fellas?" Ryan Foley, member of the Big Sky Podcast Network, the R&R Catcast. So if you're interested to hear the Montana State take and kind of what they're thinking, be sure to check out their show because they'll give you all the scoop. Especially they've got a head coaching search right now up in Bozeman. So follow those guys and they'll let you know about everything that's going on up there with the Montana State Bobcats. So let's get into it, guys. Let's go. We've talked a little bit about both sides. Oh, I also wanted to point out one thing. You mentioned a young team. One of those young standouts to me. I mean, there was some veteran leadership on this Montana State team with Xavier Bishop and Aminu Adamu, who, I mean, we talked about this in the chat. The kid can jump out of the gym. He's just so athletic. But I did want to point out Tyler Patterson really hurt the Wildcats tonight or this afternoon with those corner threes. And so continue to see that kid really become a shooter in the conference because he was very good. All right, now let's move on to, let's go turnovers and takeaways first. And let's start with takeaways. Sean Lewis, what's your takeaway from this one?
My takeaway is the late game maturity of the Wildcats today. There was a point late in the second half where Weber was up by 8. The Bobcats cut that lead down to 3 with about 2 minutes left. I could be wrong on my time frame there, but got it cut down to 3. And the Wildcats didn't fall apart. They didn't play not to lose. They made their free throws. They played well. Good coaching, good maturity from a team. This is something that I don't think we would have seen on Wildcat teams of recent vintage. And this is 2 close games happened on Thursday. Was another type of close game, but love to see the late game maturity where when things were falling apart, they weren't scoring for, I think we had 5 possessions that were empty in that stretch. But we held on, and that's the sign of a good team that can win. And those types of building blocks give you confidence for the next time you're in that situation. So late game maturity from the Wildcats is my takeaway.
Definitely. Chappie, what about you? What's your takeaway from this one? Or from the weekend, sorry.
It is the whole weekend. It is part of this. Is my takeaway is that I love how balanced the team is. Any combination of players can beat you on any night, and that is extremely enjoyable to watch. Thursday it was Isaiah Brown and Dante Bassett. Tonight this afternoon it was Sigu and more Zaire Porter, right? But that's the beauty of it, and I think really bodes well for Weber State going forward because, as we've seen in past series, that second game tends to be coaching adjustments that win or lose the game, and usually they're keying off whoever killed you the night before. And in this case, it didn't matter because other guys just step up. To me, that's the takeaway: is how deep we are. That going forward in a conference tournament situation or even in an NCAA tournament situation, that says really good things about us because it's not stop one man and the game is done. Even from threes. I mean, Siegel was the only guy hitting threes tonight. Everybody else was not, but that's all it had to have. Generally speaking, Randy Ray teams, it tends to be a little bit of a live and die by the 3 type situation. Well, had Sigu not been good, 5 of 6 from 3, it would have absolutely been we died by the 3 type of game.
Yeah, and shout out to Coach Ray because I think in these last two games, he's really done a good job of understanding and recognizing who has the hot hand on the court. Because, like you said,
Very
Chet,
much so.
there are so many weapons on this roster. And that first game, I think we had five or six guys in double figures. Nobody was really, just totally blowing them away, but everybody was contributing. And so when it was crunch time and you really needed a bucket, you go to Isaiah Brown because he's got the hot hand, right? Today, I think there was a point in the second half where Coach Ray recognized the fact that Sigu was the guy to go to and that he was going to be the one to close it out. And so he said, go for it. And he got really aggressive, going to the rack. He was taking the screens. Bassett was nice to come out, set the screen. And then, he's shooting threes behind him. That's an NBA move. And, and they were falling because he was the only one hitting threes, which is normally where the Wildcats do well, but they just weren't there today. And so shout out to Coach Ray for recognizing who we need to go to, who needs to be on the floor right now, because they've got the energy and they're contributing.
Hey, I want to follow up on that. And my boy Chappie has been critical of Coach Ray in the past of getting out coached, especially against the top teams in the Big Sky.
I'll say that too. I have as well.
We saw that with Wayne Tinkle. We always felt like Coach Ray was getting out coached. Randy Ray did not get out coached today. Did not get out coached today over this weekend, and they adjusted to the adjustments. You saw Montana State come out in a little bit different defensive setup at the start of this game. They took what they learned. They wanted to change some things. They wanted to take away the three. They started with that high, little bit half court press that they were running. And Weber was able to get through that. And that's coaching. That's being able to adjust on the fly to what's being presented to you and going with the hot hand. So all credit to Randy Ray for that coaching adjustment.
Well, and Thursday, Colby, you mentioned, Randy Ray recognizing that Siga was the hot hand and go with that. Thursday, it was almost the exact opposite. It was Isaiah Brown with the hot hand, and it was Bassett setting screens for him on big plays at the end of the first half and the end of the game. That is good coaching. I will also just jump on the bandwagon of a close game and Weber State finishing it out. How many times last year, at home, Sean, you and I were sitting together at a few of those where it was like,
yes,
holy crap, comes down to the last play of the game and inevitably we would lose it. Both Thursday night and this afternoon came down to a 3-point game with under 2 minutes to go, and Weber State pulls it out. That's great. That's experience and coaching. That's phenomenal.
Feels like we've got some Purple Palace mojo back. Used to be, you feel like, man, with the fans and how everything is going there, you always feel like the Purple Palace is a tough place to win for the Big Sky, and we've got a definite home court advantage. Felt like we lost that last year. Felt like teams weren't scared to come into the Purple Palace. And I know that we haven't had the fans, but it feels like there's a mojo and a definite. You're going to have a tough game when you come to Ogden, and that's the reputation we want to have. We don't want the Palace to be an easy place for these teams to come in and get a victory. And we got that over this weekend. And a good team. Montana State is a really, really good team. We want to make sure that. That we give them credit because they're at the top of the Big Sky standings. But man, what a good 2 wins for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that kind of advantage at Weber State before, right? It exists in the Swenson gym with the volleyball program, right? We've talked to Coach Jeremiah Larson about that, how about playing, coming to the Swenson is difficult for teams. And we've seen it up at Stewart Stadium where, Coach Hill has said it a number of times. Nobody comes in here and takes what we want, were his words, right? I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, you protect this. And last year, the Wildcats were undefeated in Stewart Stadium. Nobody came and took what we wanted. And so it's nice to see the Purple Palace maybe return to that, where it's like, you don't come into the Purple Palace and win, because that's a nice thing to have when you've got to go on the road against, tough squads. Like, we've got a tough series coming up in Missoula, and that's a tough place to win as well. And even though the Grizz are kind of hurting right now, their offense is struggling, you never know in a place like Missoula. And it's nice to see that advantage come back to the Purple Palace in Ogden.
Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about some of the good things here, guys. I like what you've said. AC is in our chat, our normal panelist, and he's saying, it's good to see the guys win ugly. That shows maturity, and I agree with you. That's my takeaway here, is that, closing out games. We've lost a couple of close games here, and closing out games and seeing this team mature is a good sign going into the conference tournament in mid-March. That's what we want to see. Totally agree with Jeff Millard. Xavier Bishop has game. I said that early in the game in our in our Big Sky Podcast Network group chat on Twitter. It was like, man, this kid is just so good. He was good on both nights.
Well, you know who else was good tonight for Montana State was Bello.
Bello was good.
Thursday, the Montana State big men had no answer for whatever Weber State wanted to do down low for a majority of the game, and it seemed like Bello took that a little bit personally, and even stood over and taunted Dylan Jones a little bit, but toward the end of the game. But yeah, he was good. So was Adamu. They've got a good team.
Yeah. Ended up going 50% from the field, getting 12 points, 2 of 3 from the line, even though he did foul out. 11 rebounds for Bello. Really great player. So let's talk now, guys. Let's go to the other side. What are your turnovers for this one? Sean Lewis, let's start with you.
I really feel bad because I want to I don't want to bury this guy, but the walking bucket, Cody Carlson, did not have a great series. That could be matchup problems. Chappie can talk a lot more about this than I have. The thing that stood out to me is he's hitting 65% from the field for the season. He went 1 for 4 today in 11 minutes. Just not the production we're used to seeing from him. Could be foul trouble, could be a bad matchup. But I think that goes to the depth of Weber State, that when one of the guys that has been a big contributor throughout the season isn't having a great night, we've got other guys that step up. Sigu, averaging 10 points per game, gets over 20 today. I think 23 was his final number. But Cody not having the best series, but the Wildcats were able to overcome that, and it didn't seem to affect the game in this against Montana State in this series.
Yeah. Sigu actually eclipsed his career high, got 25 today. So that's his new career high. Chappie, what about you? What's your turnover for this one?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same thing. It's Cody Carlson having a rough weekend. Very atypical. He was in foul trouble. It just, even like the baby hook wasn't dropping. Like that's
money, right?
That thing's been money all season. Yeah. So it was difficult to watch. But to Sean's point, it very much. I mean, if there's a negative, if there's a positive to him getting in foul trouble, it was that Dante Bassett did not have any foul trouble the entire weekend, and that is a great thing. I mean, that was absolutely phenomenal. He was banging down there with Bello the entire game, and for a guy who's been in foul trouble basically every game up until last Thursday night, it was very enjoyable to watch him play physical, be aggressive, and not get in foul trouble.
Feels like Dante's turned that corner over the last 4 games. We saw that in the series against Idaho. He really didn't get in foul trouble. Again, matchups versus ref assignments. You know, you're going to have different referees that are going to have different biases each game. But I feel like Dante's kind of settled down and got into a really good groove where he's not getting in that early foul trouble that keeps him from being productive.
Yeah, another thing I'll say is in the second game, especially, in defense of Cody Carlson, Montana State's, their defense was to double. Always double.
They were doubling him the entire time.
Come and double, exactly. And so that can be difficult, right? And so, I think that just a rough weekend. I don't think it's anything really to Cody. I think he'll learn from it and he'll continue to grow, because it's nice to see, at the beginning of the season, we talked a lot about how we were looking forward to the defense of Dante Bassett. And tonight, or this afternoon, and on Thursday night, we got to see that Dante Bassett's game is so much more than just the defense. Offensively, he has been there. And so it's a nice thing to have when, the walking bucket, Cody Carlson, is having a rough weekend. They're doubling him. He's just not getting the shots. He's not getting to his spots the way he usually does, that Dante Bassett can pick up that production and get really good buckets at the rim or get to the foul line.
Seeing the comment from Ryan, from Montana State fan, thought Bassett was a major thorn, hitting a ton of 3-pointers to get there to a few momentum swingers, as he puts in the comments right now. Those big time buckets when you need them.
Well, and we've talked about that in our own personal chats, right, guys? About the fact that the front court has the 3, and that's just something we haven't had, the ability to spread the floor like that, where Dante Bassett can shoot the 3. We've seen Cody Carlson hit the 3. Zaire Porter on the wing can hit the 3.
Michael Kozak.
I'm starting to be converted. Big guy threes. I've been against it for a long time. But when you're hitting from 35%, everybody hits 35% and above. You can't argue.
I mean, that's dangerous.
That's the line, right? If you're below 35%, then I don't want to see you do it. But if you're hitting 35% and above, fire away.
Hey, one more interesting note on our big men. There was a stretch today, which I hadn't seen much or at all this season, where we had Bassett, Carlson, and Michael Kozak on the floor at the same time.
Wow, that's
I thought that was interesting. We went there for a couple minutes, but it was interesting to me because on Thursday night, we almost went the exact opposite. We went way small, and we'd keep. I remember there was a stretch where we had Bassett in, and then they subbed out Kozak for Dylan Jones, and we went small. So I don't. We have a luxury of assets
Yeah.
this team.
It's good to be a Wildcat fan right now.
Well, yeah, and one thing that I'll say is I think that lineup existed because Adamu and Bishop were so effective at scoring at the rim in this game that it was like, gosh, we got to do something about these guys because they're just getting to the rim and it's a problem. So before we move on to MVP, guys, I do want to shout out our sponsor, WildcatRack.com. If you're in the market for licensed Weber State gear, WildcatRack.com is your place. We got a couple of really good designs up there right now. We can ship them straight to your door. And so if you want something unique, saw a few fans wearing Wildcat Rack designs in the game on Thursday night and this weekend. So kudos to those fans who are out there repping the new designs up at wildcatrack.com. Really appreciate them and their support of Weber State Weekly. So now let's go to MVP really quickly. I'll go to you first, Chappie. Who's your MVP for this one?
Segu's the MVP, so I'm gonna go somebody else. Segu is absolutely the MVP today. We've often joked here about good Segu versus bad Segu. Today was not just good Segu; it was MVP Segu. He was in control from moment one. But if there's an MVP two for me, it's Zaire Porter. Zaire Porter played lights out and hustled. He was all over the place for much of the game, and especially early on had some really key contributions that kept the game close. But 100%, it was Segu's the MVP.
Okay. Sean Lewis, what about you? Who's your MVP?
I was calling Segu 7 of 9 from field goals, 32 minutes, 5 of 6 from 3-point land, 6 of 6 from the charity stripe, 3 boards, 4 assists. I don't know if we could sing his 25 points. I don't think we can sing his praises too much tonight.
Those are Isaiah Brown numbers, right? Those are Isaiah Brown.
Those are Big Sky MVP type numbers. I super game all the way around for Segu. Congrats to him for having just a fantastic series.
Yeah. I'm just going to throw in here really quickly, guys, for my MVP. I'm going to go a little bit, off ball, and I'm going to go with Dylan Jones. And here's why. Dylan Jones had a number of really, really good plays where he's working off the ball, trying to get steals. Yeah, there we go. Dylan's out there just trying to, doing all the small things. Did get himself in a little bit of foul trouble because he was being so aggressive, ended up having 4 fouls. But when you look at Dylan's stats, it's like, oh, well, that's not that impressive. He only had 6 points, 2 of 3, had a couple of free throws, but 11 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and only turned the ball over twice, with as much as he handled the ball trying to get to the rack. I like what Dylan Jones is doing right now. I like the defense he's playing. So hashtag DJ DPOY because I want to see it. That's mine for this one. We do have one more question that I do want to just do it really, really quick. I do want to do that. Ryan asked us, what's your power ranking for Big Sky right now? Top 5. So I want to ask you guys, Chappie, who's your top 5 right now?
I'm giving us the top. Okay. I'm going to say this in no particular order. I think there's it's Weber, Montana State's the best team I've seen us play. Eastern Washington is supposed to be good. I haven't watched a ton of them. We haven't seen them live. So they're in there somewhere. They're good. SUU's good too. SUU seems a little bit more streaky than I think, which I think is probably due to inexperience than good, but they're good. When they're on, they're on. So I'm going to say 4. And then if there's a 5, it can be anybody. It can be Idaho State, it can be Portland. It's any of the other teams that there's a pretty steep drop off after the top 4, in my opinion.
Okay. Sean Lewis, what about you?
I agree. It's a 4-team league right now. You've got 4 teams all at 6 and 2 right now. Southern Utah, Weber State, Montana State, Eastern Washington. I think Weber gets the nod, 1, because I'm a fan and I'm a homer, and I admit that. But 2, the Weber Montana State was the biggest matchup that we've seen in the Big Sky. I don't think we've seen Eastern Washington play one of these big teams to show what they can do. You've got Sac State at 4-4, Idaho State at 5-3, Northern Colorado 5-6. It just shows that anybody can win on any given night, and
Yes.
and you've got to show up for both games on the weekend, and depending on whether you're playing at home or on the road or what's going on, or you're in the protocols. I just wish the conference, we had the commissioner on a couple weeks ago. I just wish we could get some of these games back. I want to see Weber play EWU. I want to see Weber play ISU. There's no reason that Southern Utah and ISU couldn't have played this weekend. But I think Weber with the sweep over Montana State, I think Weber gets the nod for the number one team. And then it's going to be a shootout for the remainder of the season.
Yeah, because we got AC in the chat right now, guys, saying no pushes. No pushes are the rules here at Weber State Weekly.
I didn't push.
You didn't, but Chappie did. So let's put some numbers on that, Chappie. Give us something more definitive.
Okay, I'm going to go Weber, Montana State, Eastern Washington, SUU, and then Idaho State, because a lot of people have just said they're good. But I have not seen them, and nobody really talks about Idaho State because they're terrible and whatever. But they look to be having a good year.
Pretty cool. Like they've got some guys up in Pocatello, and that's weird to say, but they do. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna go really, really quickly with this. I'm struggling because I agree with you. I think that with this, 2-win series this weekend, it really kind of puts Weber State at the top of the conference. But I have that weak spot of not seeing Eastern Washington play yet. I really want to. I was talking to another guy in the Big Sky Podcast Network while the game was going, Rusty Kramer, who does the Eagles Power Hour. If you're interested in learning about what EWU has, they got a really great interview this week with Tanner Groves, who is a phenomenal front court player for those guys. So check out Eagles Power Hour if you want to know a little bit more about EWU. But I haven't seen those guys yet, so I want to put them up there like 2, 3. I think probably I agree with you. I'm probably going to go Weber State, Montana State, Eastern Washington, and then where do I go from there? SUU, I guess, because I think SUU is streaky. I don't know that they have necessarily what it takes. And then a fifth team, like you said, I guess Idaho State, because I just haven't seen those guys, but that's kind of where I'm landing.
Well, SUU still feels like a fraud. I mean, they've been, I don't know. I don't know if they're legitimate. They're good. They get wins. But the key for me, Colby, and I've got to wrap, I've got to go, but Southern Utah and EWU split mid-January. They played in Cheney. First game was 75-63 for Southern Utah. For Eastern Washington. Southern Utah got the win 94-99 in the second game of that weekend. So I think that split is very telling about what Eastern Washington is. Weber also split against Southern Utah, but that was more on a last-second thing. I think those teams are even. It's so even at the top of the Big Sky right now.
Yeah. Well, so here's my thought on if, from a Weber State standpoint, if Eastern Washington may be really good, I think that actually plays into Weber State's hand if they don't play and go into the conference tournament and end up playing, because Weber traditionally has dominated the first game against any team they've played. Not so much against Montana State on Thursday, but absolutely did it against Portland State, absolutely did it against SUU, and did it against Idaho because they're just not very good. But
they're struggling up there right now.
But I think that actually helped Weber State going into the conference tournament, because if it's a one-off game with Eastern Washington and neither team has seen each other, trends tell you that Weber State's going to win that game.
Yeah. All right, fellas. Good recap, good instant reaction. A quality weekend here in Ogden. Obviously it's all smiles here, and so we'll look forward to next week, where I believe. Let me just check the schedule really quickly, but I believe we are on the road against the hated Montana Grizz in Missoula, which will be a very difficult series, because even though Montana's offense has struggled this year, they will be they're not an easy out, like we've talked about a number of times. And so
never sleep on the Grizzlies, ever.
Never sleep on the Grizz. Yep. Thursday, the 11th.
Always tough at home.
Yep. Thursday, the 11th, will be up in Missoula. That game will be at 5 p.m. And then on Saturday, the game will be at noon. So with that, we're going to wrap up like we always do and say thank you guys for watching. Make sure to support WildcatRack.com. And we'll say Weber State, Weber State.
Great.
Great.
Great. Go Wildcats.